Boom.
Whoa.
I know. Blade Runner is directed by Ridley Scott, and it stars Harrison Ford. And this movie came out in 1982, and it's about this character named Deckard, who's a Blade Runner, and his job is to hunt down replicants who are androids. And these characters, androids, replicants, they're illegal on Earth, and the Blade Runners, they hunt down the replicants and retire them, which is basically killing them. So 4 replicants steal a ship in outer space and travel back to Earth to find their creator because they want to live longer, and Deckard, played again by Harrison Ford, has to hunt them down and retire them.
So we're going to keep this review fairly simple. We're just going to talk positives and negatives, but we are going to be talking spoilers, so if you haven't seen it already, rent it, go see it with friends, whatever you need to do, but we will be talking spoilers.
And in my opinion, if you're going to rent it, make sure it's a really cheap rental. Because I have to be honest, I did not care for this movie that much. We had seen it a couple of years ago, but I fell asleep during it. And this time, I stayed focused for the most part. I was watching it, taking notes. It still just did not connect with me. I don't understand the hype of this movie. And maybe that's because we watched the theatrical cut, and I know we're probably going to get a lot of flack for that, but we did not have the unicorn dream, not that I remember. So, you know, it wasn't the director's cut or the final cut. I mean, this movie has been voted one of the most influential sci-fi films of all time. And it's in like the top 5 or 10 sci-fi movies of all time. I don't see it. I personally did not like this movie. Harrison Ford just didn't seem like he cared for this role. He was just there to get a paycheck. Especially in the fight scenes, you can really see him just kind of just flops around, and the dialogue or not the dialogue, but the narration. While I get what they were doing and I appreciate the thought, it just didn't work out very well. Harrison Ford's narration just it got annoying.
Yeah. I liked it better the second time watching it. I think there was more to understand. I think I didn't quite understand the plot the first time I watched it because it is very difficult to follow. There's a lot of quiet parts and in-your-face type of things that I wasn't really sure what was going on the first time I saw it. The second time I really focused and was trying to figure out and piece it all together. One thing I do appreciate is I really do like the film noir style with the canted angles and the light through the blinds and the smoke and the rain and the dreariness of it. I kind of like that. But I agree with you. I felt like this is one of those roles where Harrison Ford just kind of is not very into it.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like that with a lot of his roles if you think about it.
Except for Han Solo in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
In Force Awakens, he didn't really feel
that
like he wanted
doesn't
to be
really
there
count.
either.
There is a lot of things going on and a lot of underlying, in between the lines kind of stuff that you really had to try to figure out. It was very hard to follow, very confusing, very choppy. If you don't realize what's happening to begin with, you're not really sure why he's even there. Why is Harrison Ford eating a cup of noodles, and why are these people trying to arrest him? I don't understand what's happening.
Yeah, it's a very slow movie. It's boring,
paced.
and I don't get the hype for it. I can appreciate what it did for sci-fi movies. I mean, it came out before Back to the Future Part 2, so it was one of the early movies with hover cars, and that was incredible to see. And they actually did a pretty good job at it.
Yeah, the wide
it's
shots.
Just, it was too slow. It's like, okay, he's looking through a windshield. Okay, it's raining. They're coming in for a landing. They're still coming in for a landing. It was just too slow. It's like, okay, let's move on.
Yeah. And even with the action scenes where things started to pick up, it was still like the stereotypical dialogue fighting.
Yeah.
Where they're like figuring each other out and what's the move going like mind games with each other before, and really it wasn't even mind games. But the other thing is, a lot of it is just scary to look at, like the toys.
That was so bad.
I think it was just I was just not sure why it was even in there, I guess.
It was unnecessary, except for one part where one of the replicants decides to pose as a toy for 10 seconds while Deckard is looking through all the stuff, and she surprises him because, hey, she's not a toy.
Yeah. But, see, that's the funny thing I found about this movie. I think that was, like, the underlying plot is that they chose Deckard because he's one of the best Blade Runners, and he's somewhat, like, I don't know if he's been out of work for a while or there wasn't any replicants left for him to really get. But then he goes and you're like, he's hunting them down, doesn't notice they're there, and then gets beat up by every single one of them.
Yeah,
before he accidentally is able to kill them, basically. Like, or luckily, because one of them could have killed him very easily. Leon, I think, was his name. When he hunts down the first woman, replicant, and she's just running from him. He shoots her in the back, and she falls over. She's dead, whatever. While all this is happening, Leon, one of the other replicants, like, notices him and then chases him in the alley or whatever.
Starts fighting him,
beating him up. Could have killed him super easily, but, like, not shows him mercy, but is playing around with him so much that it gives this other lady, the other girl that Deckard meets, who happens to be a replicant that's a more advanced replicant,
he falls in
saves
love with
him, and they fall in love with each other somehow.
Yeah. Now, on a more positive side, I did like the idea of going with a neo-noir style. The idea behind the narration was fantastic.
Yeah, I think it needed it.
Yeah, it didn't come off very well. Again, the effects in this movie are very good for the time. Some of them hold up because they are physical models that they shot with the camera and they're actually there. The futuristic city where it's just like a melting pot of culture, I thought that was interesting because it's not a language that exists, it's a bunch of languages. It's called street language, I think. It's all just melded in from like 4 or 5 languages into one. I thought that was an interesting concept. One of the biggest positives I have for this movie, though, is the music. The music, it's weird, but I like it. It's like it was ahead of its time. And I really liked that 80s synthesizer. It's really cool. And I didn't remember the music when I saw the first trailer for Blade Runner 2049. I'm like, hey, that's really cool music. And then I'm like, oh, that's actually in the original. I do like the music in this. My biggest negative with this movie is the climax of the movie. Because the replicant Roy, in the end, when he's fighting against Deckard, at first he's being really creepy about it, and he reaches through the wall, breaks his fingers, and then all of a sudden he's like in his underwear chasing him and just toying with him. It's like, you could have easily killed him, and then by the end of the fight, chase scene really, he ends up saving him. It's just, none of that makes sense. It's like, why? It didn't really even need to be part of the movie. I get it. It needs to have a climactic battle, but I didn't like it. I was bored the entire time. Like, okay, it's gonna, yeah, whatever. But the line that he came up with at the end, that wasn't in the script. He came up with that all on his own about all of his memories being lost like tears in the rain. That's a pretty good line. If we're coming up with it on the spot, that's pretty cool. Yeah. But
see,
that happened before that.
I can appreciate. I liked the fact that they attempted to take a closer look at the human condition. Yeah. In a sense, like, this is where our world is going. Very detached, not emotional, trying to, make the life better, but at the same time, things are just happening where people are out of work and people are, just in this mesh of a mess. It's just the world is a mess, I guess, is the best way to put it. Yeah. And they're taking something that's not human to make you look at the human perspective type of thing. And I can see the attempt, and I see that draw there, trying to be like that, but I just don't think it was very impactful as it probably, as Ridley Scott probably wanted it to be.
Yeah.
But I do really like that film noir style, and I really like, as bad as the narration was from Harrison Ford, it was like reminiscent of like those old private investigator type movies from like the 40s and 50s, where it's like, you know, the strange woman came into my office and it was a rainy day and that kind of stuff. I liked that. I mean, it made me appreciate it and smile a little bit. But
I just didn't like how he delivered the lines.
I didn't like the way he delivered the lines either.
I mean, Harrison Ford, he's not a bad actor. Just this movie, it's not one of his strongest examples of his acting career.
And you and I were talking earlier when we first were watching it about, is he a replicant? Because he seems like he's a replicant too. And they kind of, the only clue you really get to that is when he meets Rachel, who's a replicant, and he's kind of trying to figure out if she is a replicant by this questioning system that this society has. It took him a lot longer to figure out that she was a replicant than the normal replicant. And all of the replicants have this thing when they look at the camera off camera a certain way, their eyes glow like the reflection of cats or dogs at night when they're just glowing. And you can tell it's only the replicants. And then there's this one part where she's looking off toward the audience, sort of, and he's behind her looking at her.
Out of focus,
but his eyes do the glowy thing. So I'm not sure if that was just they couldn't figure out how to get this shot without his eyes glowing because of the effect they used, or if it was an actual clue that he's an actual replicant that they used to track down other replicants.
Right.
So I think it's interesting, and we'll see.
Well, I guess in the final cut version, he has a dream about a unicorn. And that one cop that was leaving like those origami things, he left him a unicorn one.
Right.
It's basically saying like this is an implanted memory or an implanted dream or something. So, and I think Ridley Scott's gone on record to basically confirm that yes, he's a replicant. And
you didn't get that from the theatrical.
No, you don't.
It wasn't like clear.
No.
There was a couple of hints and you wondered about it, but it was never really solidified with the audience.
And I guess they'll find out more when we go see Blade Runner 2049 sometime this weekend.
So do you think you're a movie buff? You can test your knowledge on Popcorn Trivia.
It's a mobile app that you can download on your Apple or Android device for free. And it's a really fun game, guys. You can customize your own avatar. You can choose from hundreds of movies. In fact, every Friday on New Movie Friday, they release a movie from the theaters, at least one new movie, as well as another movie that has already been out for a long time, and even a TV show sometimes. So be sure to check out Popcorn Trivia.
And test your movie knowledge. So with everything I said earlier, I give Blade Runner a C-. It's just because, I mean, didn't dislike it, but I also didn't really have too much positive things going for it while I'm watching it. So
I so badly wanted to like this movie. I really did try because I knew that it had such like a big cult following, but it didn't connect with me. I didn't get the hype for it. I gotta give Blade Runner a C-, and those action scenes, they're not that good. While I can appreciate what it did for sci-fi movies, overall I didn't really like it that much.
So we want to know what you guys think. Did you like it, love it, or hate it? Let us know in the comment section below.
And if you like this video, be sure to give it a big old thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you hit that bell icon next to the subscribe button so you can be notified of when we upload new content. We are planning to go see Blade Runner 2049 this weekend. It's a busy weekend, but we are going to get our review out as soon as we can. So until next time, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.